Ba 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 da ba. I think we're streaming. And Scott's not muted. All right. And I ain't wearing pants because it's warm out.
I'm not wearing pants either.
Yeah? Well, I ain't wearing shorts. I got to fix that. All right. Got all my crap open. Let's go to the YouTube. That looks good. All right. It's Thursday, April 26th, 2018. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we're talking about not just failed conventions, but actual scam conventions. But also failed conventions. Okay.
Ignorance or malice.
Yep, they have the same
It
effect.
doesn't matter. I say punish the ignorant the same as you would punish the malicious.
Yep, I
Even
agree.
though the world doesn't do it that way.
Yeah,
they
well, we do.
should.
It's pointed that we do separate first-degree murder from second-degree from third-degree.
Sure.
Like the difference of, did you intend to kill that person in particular? Did you plan it in advance? Like the fact that we do agree on those lines. Like we do recognize the difference between you killed someone because you were mad at him versus you killed someone by planning for 3 months on how to kill them. Versus you killed someone because you suck at driving. But I do feel like that last one should be punished way more strongly.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right. All right.
You should never be allowed to drive again, ever. Anywhere. At the minimum.
So yeah, I every 2 years or so I gotta get a new cell phone, and it's about that time because I noticed that just in the last week, my current cell phone, which is about 2 years old, so actually a little over 2 years old, I got a pretty good run with this thing. It used to have a 30 to 40 hour battery life. Like the whole reason I bought this phone is that it's the one small Android phone, like the only one that's good, and the battery lasts forever. And it's running out of juice now because it doesn't throttle itself and slow down like the iPhone does when its battery is dying.
You can't just replace the battery?
No, you can't replace batteries on most phones.
Why not?
I mean, I guess I could try to take it to a custom shop, but
I could replace a battery on my iPhone.
At an Apple store or some third-party person doing it.
Either way.
Yeah, because this phone is actually waterproof.
Mm-hmm.
Can't just open it. And
It's been said that many phones are waterproof and simply do not advertise as such because they don't want people to like jump in pools with their phones.
I've jumped in pools with this one. I've used it in the water at the beach. I've showered with it. I've read Fark like while I was showering.
My iPhone 7 has been through many wet. It hasn't been dropped in submerged in water.
I have taken photos underwater with my phone.
All right, but it has, it has been in many rainy and wet and splashy situations. Yet it is working 100% well.
But anyway, so the battery's finally running out of steam. It's been about 2 years. Gonna buy a new phone. I look, and sure enough, there is a brand new, like just coming out, the latest iteration of that same kind of phone. However, upon looking at it, it's bigger. It's
Dun,
like a
dun,
centimeter
dun.
taller.
Dun, dun, dun.
Even the compact version of this phone now is starting to grow.
Dun, dun, dun.
Also, it looks really fugly.
Dun, dun, dun.
But last year, they released an updated version that is basically just a far superior version of the phone I already have. And because it's a year-old design, it costs hundreds of dollars less. So I just bought it, and for the first time in my life, I am buying a new phone before my old phone was actually unusable.
You didn't break it on purpose to feel better about yourself?
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
you usually do?
Well, like you broke your computer so you could upgrade your computer.
Yes. Of
Yeah,
course.
you definitely did.
Except I then gave that computer to someone who then recognized, yes, it was definitely
Oh
broken.
no, you broke it, and they fixed it.
How could I break a computer in that specific way?
Like,
Even if I wanted to.
you set the RAM timing wrong. I assume you were smart enough to set it right. You
I
just didn't.
always trust auto. I never look at it.
Yeah, just trust auto.
always trust
this one
auto.
part of your life, you just trust the auto configuration, even though you should have known better.
I trust auto in all parts of my life. I default everything. That's my policy.
Yeah, I didn't know that your motherboard's default is some weird overclocking nonsense.
Yeah, why
too.
is the default wrong? That's a good question.
Why didn't you know what the default does?
I just do.
Why'd you set up your computer to break so you could buy a new one? So anyway, I bought a new phone. I'm going to review it on Monday because it's coming tomorrow because I live in a city. If I buy anything on Amazon, it arrives either the same day or the next day. So it'll be waiting for me when I get home. the funny thing is, our friend Chris Reimer, who many of you know as the last name I say in the Patreon call-outs at the end of the show every week.
I thought what happened to Thomas Hahn.
Well, and Thomas Hahn. Chris Reimer and Thomas Hahn. If they ever change the order, it's going to really fuck me up.
They should. Thomas Hahn, get
No.
on that.
Well, the only way to change the order is to change the amount of money they give us.
No, Thomas Hahn could go to 0 and then go back to stay at 0 because that's the smart
But
thing
then I
to
wouldn't
do.
say his name.
Good.
So
Everyone go to 0. That's the wise thing to do.
hey, that money's going to fund our convention. It's going to fund that graphic design thing you're trying to do.
No, it's going to fund Church of the Beach.
Nah,
Suckers.
not yet. To fund the church on the beach, the Patreon would have to be a couple orders of magnitude above. In fact, that is a stretch goal. There is an amount of money that is formally in the Patreon, and if we hit that amount, we will quit our jobs and go to the beach, and the only
Right.
thing we'll do is make this
All right,
GeekNights
person with more money than you know what to do with.
It's a lot of
You
money.
they should get on that. Everyone else, 0.
Oh yeah, if there's a
Everyone
wealthy,
else, 0. Rich person, the full amount.
if there is a wealthy benefactor out there who wants to fund us for some reason,
I don't think rich people like GeekNights because of how much we smack talk about how evil and bad rich people are.
I know a small number of pretty rich people who listen, and I don't know a lot about them, but they listen to the show, and I know about them
All
because
right.
I've talked to them.
All right, rich person, you have so much money. It's just a giant number in a bank account that does not affect your life in any way, but you can dramatically change our lives. Better yet, the lives of someone who deserves it more than we do. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I feel like
You won't even notice anything tomorrow. It'll just be numbers will be different. Big fucking whoop.
I feel like they should skip funding us and go right down to someone who needs it more.
That's what I'm saying. Patreon for GeekNights should be 0.
But yeah, so there's a lot of news to talk about. We're avoiding talking about all the breaking news where we don't have anything new to add to the conversation.
There is nothing new.
But there is some pretty big news that we have a lot to say about.
Is there?
It's your news.
Oh, right. Okay, so the news is Ford, which is, I guess, a big car company if you're in America, but I guess the rest of the world doesn't necessarily give that much of a shit about Ford.
I have no idea how Ford sells internationally.
Yeah, I've seen Fords in other countries, but not much.
I've never owned a Ford.
Yeah, but anyway, so we had Fords. We had some Taurus and
I had
some Windstar at some
I was
points.
all Plymouth, Pontiac, like that was where I went.
Anyway, Ford is a big deal car company because their name comes from Henry Ford, who is the first person with a
The
car.
first one.
The first one with a car factory, the Model T, the first car. I mean, I guess technically there may have been other cars before the Model T, maybe, but that was the first mass-produced car that everyone could buy who had money.
You know, so fun side story. When I was a kid and moving in high school, my family moved and we bought a house. And the person who owned the house that we were buying it from, when we were inspecting the
Had
house,
a Model T.
we go into the garage. There's just a Model T there.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, that's cool. And she's like, oh, yeah, you want to go for a ride? She was using it as her primary car.
No, why not?
Yeah.
People do that. It works.
The
It's
engine,
real simple. Anyone can fix it.
you can fix that engine with like pliers, screwdriver, wrench, and
It's easier,
basic knowledge
it's easier
of
to
combustion
keep a Model
engines.
T running than some other car because it's just so straightforward. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, if you like a part breaks, you could just make the replacement part probably. You know, anyway, so yeah, the news is that Ford, the car company, is only going to be making 2 cars from now on. No more Taurus, no more. The only cars they're
No
making.
sedans.
No, the only car they're making now is the Mustang. And there's one Ford Focus model that's kind of sporty, and otherwise they're only making trucks and SUVs. Fuck all other models.
Now, I think there's a lot of reasons why this is big news. One, car companies, traditional ones, tend to move very slowly and tend to make incremental change, and very rarely will do a big hullabaloo
Well,
like
part of
this.
it is because they're old-fashioned big businesses, but also part of it is because you got a big old car factory. You got to do
Yep.
things way in advance. You can't just suddenly change the car factory, suddenly close one, suddenly open one, suddenly retool one. It's not easy. It takes time.
But
So
I think
even if they had decided to do this years ago, it would have taken until now to actually make it happen.
But the reason I think this is big news is that a lot of the car industry, like commercialization model, shall we say, has relied forever, at least for modern history, on taking the identity of a person and getting them to attach that identity to a car brand, and then tying the idea of owning a car to all these fundamental aspects of American life, like freedom and adulthood.
Well, I think in other countries, cars are marketed differently. But
I'm
way,
talking about America
the
specifically.
way cars are marketed in America is that it's like this whole marketing cultural thing. There's a car culture and an advertising culture.
Cars are, I think,
most ads are car ads.
Yeah,
so,
I'm pretty sure the majority of all ads in America are car ads.
Mm-hmm.
And their sole goal is to drive that brand recognition. And it's very interesting that when I got ad block and didn't have TV anymore in high school, within 5 or 6 years, I didn't know what the current makes and models of cars were anymore.
I mean, I know the ones that have been around forever.
Yeah, but I didn't know about new ones. I just didn't know. Whereas previously, that was basic common knowledge that I just learned through osmosis from ads.
Yeah, but anyway, so what's happened over the years is through a combination of marketing, but also other factors, American people who live in car places have leaned towards driving trucks and truck-like vehicles like SUVs or crossovers or whatever the hell you want to call them.
Partly because those are vehicles that actually have very utilitarian purposes, and also partly because those areas tend to skew more conservative, and conservative people tend to skew more toward trucks and SUVs.
There's cultural reasons, but there's other reasons, right? It's like my mom drives I think it's like a Subaru something, it's right. But the main reason that, she drives that instead of a car, but she drove most of her life, it's just because it's higher off the ground. It's more comfortable to be up there. You know?
I can say that because
it's
when we were
reason,
a kid.
It's those sorts of reasons. Like if you're driving a car after driving, like a van or a truck, you just feel like your ass is on the ground. You see all these other people are driving the cars that are way up above you. Now it's harder to see around them. It creates this whole sort of arms race almost, but it's also a comfort thing.
Can you narrow?
Yeah, it's there's tons and tons of reasons for this. But effectively, all this marketing and whatnot stuff worked. And now most people who drive cars in the United States want a truck or non-sedan, non-sports car, non-coupe,
most of the industry press and paid press I've read for the last decade, because car sales have been on the decline in America.
Right.
They have been making this consistent paid argument. It wasn't journalists writing these things. It was paid journalists, those fake stories.
Right.
But they all had the same narrative that car sales are down because millennials don't have money, not for any other far more intrinsic reason. But I've always believed, and I'm pretty confident this is still true, the reality is that a lot of millennials want to live in places where they don't need to have a car, have been more willing to not have a car, and it's not just that they can't afford them, it's that they don't want them.
I don't want one.
And further, even when millennials and younger people want cars, they're much more resistant to advertising than the industry projected, and they don't give a shit what kind of car. Most people I can think of who I've talked to who are younger than me, who are actually getting a car or care about cars, they want the cheapest car that will let them drive to the thing they need to drive to.
Yes.
They literally don't give a fuck.
The person who has grown up on the internet, right, in terms of culture.
They buy a car the way they buy a cell phone.
They may care about clothes or shoes or their phone or their computer.
They'll spend more on an office chair than a car.
Right. These sorts of things they care about. But the car, they don't. Car nerdery has gone way, way down in the years, right? So. It's only the number of people who are nerdy for cars is very much decreased, and thus, pretty much anyone who's my age who buys a car, who has to buy a car, gets a Honda Civic and keeps it forever as long as it works.
Yep. So case in point, when I was in high school, I needed my old.
They care more about the fact that their iPhone integrates well with the sound system in the car than what kind of engine it has or anything like that.
My old car blew up.
A lot of people I know are interested in electric car or super efficient car and things of that nature.
I am too. If I ever buy a car again, one, it has to be at least minimally self-driving, and two, probably getting something that's electric.
I'm just holding out until there are, I don't have to own the car. There's just self-driving cars about. And I just call one. They just come up to me and I get in them.
But when I was in RIT, and my previous car the engine had exploded, and I needed a new car because living in Rochester without a car sucked ass.
Yes.
So we as a group needed a car. I was the one who had the most money and the ability to buy a car, so I bought a car. And I remember going to car lots and trying to buy a used car, and hating every second of it because I literally didn't care. I just wanted the cheapest car that would work and ended up buying this purple Sunfire. And apparently no one was buying this thing because it was purple. So I got it for like 10 grand and I didn't care. I just
Even
bought
when
it.
I bought a brand
I drove
new,
it until it literally died.
Right, when I had to drive a whole bunch living in Beacon in 2006, I bought a brand new Mazda 3 because it was nice. I had a hatch, which is way useful for carrying shit to conventions that we're doing a lot at the time. Also putting a bike in the hatch, stuff like that, right? Tons of groceries in the hatch.
Yep.
Anyway, but it was a super nice car.
Well, look, when we lived when
like-
we lived upstate, you, me, and Emily each had our own car.
But even then, it was sort of like, they're like, what color do you want? And I'm like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
It's like, which one? All right, you're getting this coppery orange color that's like exclusive. I'm like, fine, whatever.
Yep.
Does it cost more? No. Fine, give me that one.
I remember you were looking at the Volkswagen and that salesperson kept being like, listen to the sound the
That
door
car
makes when you
cost
close
more
it.
money, had less space in it, but it had heated seats and
Yep.
was less fuel efficient. And also, the Volkswagen dealership had a huge line at the service area.
Yep.
which
But she
told-
kept trying to sell you on like the identity of the car, and you were just like, I do not give one fuck.
No, not at all.
It was really funny because I was in the back seat while she was trying to sell you on this fucking car.
Well, because it's about like the feel, right? It's sort of like when you're selling luxury goods, right? Like they
Yep.
feel a certain way. It's like they must have constructed the doors and such in such a way where like it just gives a really satisfying closing sound, right? Like it, and the joint on the door just feels like really satisfying to close.
Yep.
And it's like they're trying to sell you on that, but it's like sure that it feels interesting and but it's sort of like getting a really nice pencil. It writes the same, even though it just feels nice in your
Yep.
hands. Like, ooh. It's like it's not worth thousands of dollars.
Yep, and also there's that cost fallacy where if you're buying a big thing, then incremental increases in that cost, most people do not value them accordingly. So if you're buying a $200,000 house, which I wish there were $200,000 houses here.
There are. They're just not great.
Not here.
Not right here. No.
Yeah. Actually, in Beacon, there really aren't $200,000 houses either.
There, I've seen.
Yeah,
some,
the $200,000 house I looked at in Beacon was a meth lab.
I've seen some things that are like trailers that are not moving
Oh yeah,
anymore.
trailers are $200,000.
on a tiny plot of land.
But people who are buying a $200,000 house will not think that much of a $10,000 swing in either direction. But if they're buying a $10,000 car, they will care a lot about a $10,000 swing in either direction. And if they're buying a $5 sandwich, they'll care a lot about a $1 swing in either direction. People just have a terrible time with valuation. But
I do that.
yeah, I do it too.
Guilty.
It's human nature. It's very difficult to avoid that quandary.
I'm already spending this much. What, $1 more? All right.
Yep.
It's like that's a whole bagel extra. You're giving them an extra bagel.
I spent $40 more on the new cell phone I just bought because I got the blue one instead of the black one. And in retrospect, $40 is like 2 pretty good meals in New York City.
Yep.
Like pretty good with like an appetizer. So yeah, I think to not turn this into a whole show, that this news from Ford indicates a seismic shift in the car industry in the United States.
I think it's a consequence of a seismic shift that already happened long ago.
I agree. This is the consequence of a seismic
The
shift.
SUV ain't new.
But the seismic shift is that a car company admitted that this is happening and is trying to get ahead of it. All the other car companies
They're all way behind it.
are kind of fucked, and it's shocking that Ford is the one that was like, wow, this is happening, here we go.
Well, some companies, right? So, like, when I talk about the Honda Civic, it's like, well, Honda's a Japanese company. They're selling those Civics everywhere in the world, and this is only happening in America.
Yeah. I like how you still say America to this day. Cause
You see SUVs rolling in like, I don't know, Japan? Not really.
I'm just still shocked that I see SUVs rolling here.
Yeah.
Like, how do you park that thing? And the answer seems to be you don't.
People drive them in New York for some reason.
Yeah. So I guess it'll be real interesting to see how this shakes down over the next decade.
No more Ford Taurus, a legendary car.
Yeah. So in some other news, it's just sort of fascinating that this happened. So I know a lot about serial killers
All right, it's great. Okay, next topic.
in this because when I was a kid, remember, I watched Vampire Hunter D when I was in 4th grade.
What does Vampire Hunter D have to do with serial killers?
Because my mom really wanted me to
You
see
should have
it.
said I watched Silence of the Lambs.
I also
That at
watched.
least makes sense.
I watched Silence of the Lambs when I was in elementary school.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it also. I
Yeah.
don't remember when, but I definitely saw it when I was,
But
not
my
graduated
family,
from high
like
school.
my mom, was really into like horror fiction and true crime stuff and disease stuff and all these things. So I just was very interested in those things as well as a child. So I knew a lot about like scary diseases and serial killers and horror nonsense.
My mom was into horror, but more aliens, vampires kind of stuff.
We were also into that. I was reading Lovecraft like back when my elementary school teacher actually went to my parents and said, "Do you know your son has that book?" And they were like, "What? Lol." Of course he does. But anyway, the Golden State Killer was kind of a really extra terrifying serial killer.
Never heard of him before.
Yeah, a long time ago. What's crazy is they just arrested this guy now.
Good.
Like 40 years after he was an active serial killer / rapist.
Good.
And the whole story behind this thing is ridiculous. And the kinds of crime, like, this is a class of crime, like the way it happened, that literally could not happen in a modern urban setting or even a modern suburban setting. Like, it couldn't have gone on as long as it did. And it's crazy. And the whole story behind it is crazy. And it is very, I guess it speaks well to one tiny aspect of American law enforcement that, despite all the other very obvious problems that I could point to in terms of American law enforcement, the fact that the system existed to catch this dude this late is still amazing.
I mean, that's, that's the thing is like
there are
for
good
as
cops who try to catch people like this.
well, no, I mean, it's just even the bad cops try to catch people like this.
Oh yeah,
right?
they just also shoot random innocent black people for no reason.
Right, is that's the thing that they do is they'll be like they're actually doing their job and enforcing the laws,
Yeah. Well, I guess part of their
catching all
job
these-
is maintaining this racist status quo.
Right, and then if you try to say, hey, stop doing the bad stuff you do, they'll say, well, look at the stuff that we're doing that we're supposed to do, right?
Yep.
And that's the thing that, it's like, yeah, they do what they're supposed to do, and they also do these other bad things at the same time.
But also,
and just doing a good job today does not excuse doing an evil thing tomorrow.
But also, the nuance I want to point out is that this is the biggest news. Like, it is big news. It's crazy news. It's a crazy story. But also, if they had just ignored this guy and maybe shot a few less innocent people, it probably would have been a net benefit to society. I went short because we went long in the car thing. Oh, someone bought America, the trivia game.
America.
Yeah, that game is so good.
It's pretty good.
Ooh, artisan crafted sedans. I think there will be like hipster artisan self-driving cars within 20 years.
I don't know, but I think definitely people are definitely, if sedans stop being sold, people are definitely going to be maintaining sedans even that are boring now. And they go, because you think about like hot cars from the 50s and 60s that were sedans, right? Like, a Cadillac or whatever. It's like those were boring normal cars then, and now they're hot cars. And even like sedans from the 70s and 80s now are hot cars.
Yeah.
So
well, like look at these
sedans from the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s will eventually be cool cars at the auto show. Some guy will drive up with his 2007 Ford Taurus at the auto show, and people are like, "Whoa, cool, dude! Yeah, it's gonna happen."
Yeah, but once they're self-driving, I feel like customized like boxy vans that just have like tables and beds in them are going to be very popular among the upper middle class.
There's plenty of those already. Rich people already don't even
Rich
use
people
limos.
do when they can drive themselves. The problem with those cars,
what are those things called?
I forget, but they're worthless if you're not rich enough to have a driver.
Yeah, you have a driver in front, and then it's like a big box behind it.
Once it's self-driving, imagine that. You and I are like, all right, we're going to PAX tomorrow. So the self-driving cube that we own just comes to my apartment, picks up me and Emily, goes to your apartment, picks you up. We just like fall asleep or play a board game, and then it tells us when it's at the hotel at PAX.
Oh, yeah,
and then it parks itself somewhere.
Celebrities and rich people are using have been for years, at least like a decade or so. Instead of limos, like these box-like.
When I was in
van
Istanbul, you
things.
see these things fucking everywhere.
Yep.
Like everyone with money has one of these things driving them to work.
It looks like a normal Econoline van, but the back is even taller and sort of square.
And inside is like a nice little office with a little bed.
Inside can be pretty much fucking anything, and you can't see inside from the outside. There could be anything in there. There could be beds, offices. There could be the benches. There could be like a little living room in there. It's
Yep.
Like, all
could be
kinds
like
of crazy
400 ducks.
It could anything.
There's
could
like
be in
nothing
there.
else but
You can
400 ducks.
There's so many options to choose from in terms of what you put in there, and if you're rich, you can just customize it with whatever the fuck. It's probably going to be at least a TV or two, and
All right, let's do things of the day.
What was my thing of the day? All right.
Yep.
The zip file.
But anyway, things of the day. What do you got?
So check this out. I don't know if I used this already. I forget, but
I don't think so, because
All
I
right.
don't know anything about this.
Okay, so check this out. It's an NES ROM. It's a file. It's a series of zeros and ones on your file system, and the file name ends in .NES, and you can open it up in your NES emulator and run it because it's a valid NES ROM. You could put it onto a cartridge and put it in NES, and it would run, and a game would appear. I don't know what the game looks like. I haven't tried to run it, but it's an NES file. Anyway, at the same time, if you take those exact same set of zeros and ones and you just rename the file to .zip, it is also a zip file. It is a zip file and an NES file, the same set of zeros and ones. And if you were to unzip that ROM, which is also a zip file, out would come some source code, like actual source code. And if you were to run that source code through a compiler, out would come the set of zeros and ones that is an NES ROM and also a zip file.
I don't even know what to say about this.
The end.
This is like that.
You could compile it and unzip it, and then take the stuff that comes out and compile it and unzip it and so
Like-
forth. And any one of those zips could be run in the emulator.
I've seen stuff like the recursive script of a dolphin or whatever, or like the self-compile. But this takes it to a level that is amazing. It's like the speed fun, like toy code exercises like this become the speed running of computer science.
Yep. You're going to need a copy. If you want to actually do this, you're going to need zip, Python 3, and ASM6. It's the assembly compiler because the source code that comes out is assembly, right?
This is amazing.
If you try to use some other assembler, it might not assemble into the exact set of zeros and ones.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So there's a song. Scott hadn't heard it, which I'm kind of surprised by. But if you poke around in the right parts of the internet, parts of this song or remixes of parts of this song are used in a shockingly wide variety of memes and GIFs with sound type things. Like, you'll hear this song a lot if you're in the right parts of the internet. Most people don't seem to know anything about where this song came from, what the deal is with it. I'll play a snippet at the end of the show, and I'm pretty sure some of you will be like, oh, that song.
I mean, I hadn't heard the song before, but you can tell from the instrumentation that it is a Commodore 64 song because it sounds like it's coming from a SID chip, and it is.
Yep. But the song is Rob Hubbard's Monty on the Run theme from a Commodore 64 game called Monty on the Run.
Never heard of this game.
You don't need to play the game. It is not worth playing in the modern era at any point.
But Commodore 64 games almost universally have amazing music because that's what the system had the capability for.
And among those games, the soundtrack to Monty on the Run
I think
is exceptional.
I think until like the Super Nintendo and Genesis, the Commodore 64 still had better audio than like any other non-computer.
But I cannot stress to you how good this song is. Well, this soundtrack is. And I implore you to listen to this entire thing. All right. In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book is Homer's The Odyssey, translated by Emily Wilson.
Not some other translation, only the
Nope.
Emily Wilson translation.
Only the Emily Wilson one. I'm still really into it, and you guys should just read it. If you've never read The Odyssey, just read this translation. Don't
It's definitely
bother.
the easiest of the Odyssey translations I have seen to read and understand because it is in modern language and not pretend old language.
If you've read The Odyssey before, read this anyway. I think you'll have a very different perception of some of the aspects of The Odyssey when read through a modern language and
I've
not
only read
obfuscated.
Pop-Up Book Odyssey.
The Pop-Up Book Odyssey is also real good. But even the Pop-Up Book Odyssey does not really drive home the degree to which slavery was a part of pre-Greek society.
There's also a lot more Agamemnon in the Pop-Up Book Odyssey that was not yet appeared in the text Odyssey.
Is there any Legolamnon?
I hope so.
Otherwise, Geek Nights, but me, not Scott, will be live, not this weekend, but next weekend at ZenkaiCon in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's going to be amazing.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. I don't know why.
It's going to be a waste of your weekend.
I don't know why you're so down on this con. I have a great time every year.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania is not a place you want to go.
I have more fun. I'm going to be honest. I have had more fun at the average ZenkaiCon than I did at the average Anime Boston, even at the peak of our going to Anime Boston. Because all our board game friends go, and all I do, other than doing our panels, is eat awesome, like, farm-to-table food or play board games.
Did you just break your microphone stand on purpose so you could buy a new one?
No, I just popped the spring off because it pops off really easily.
You just broke it.
No, the spring just latches on here. It's
All
not.
right,
It's not an
anyway.
intrinsic property of this. Literally the cheapest microphone boom on Amazon.
Okay, so and other meta things.
We're looking to hire a graphic designer. We talked about it a lot on the previous show. If you think you could fully rebrand GeekNights,
Professionally,
we're talking like
We're-
press kits, logos,
like if you're at the
overlays,
like you know,
motion graphics.
right, someone who is pro level, like you could do it for a legit company that people know the name of level, because you're going to be paid at probably at least 4 digits worth of money for this job,
Yep.
if not more.
Yeah,
It's a real job.
we're gonna pay money.
You got to be real good to do this job, right? We're not looking for someone who does graphic design for like ye local esports team or ye local small business.
Because frankly, our website looks like Web 2.0.1.
Right. The idea is to get something done that's so good that it can last for like fucking ever and be timeless, you know, the way like, you know, like the greatest logo, like at McDonald's, timeless, right? Obviously, we're not going to get that level, like 1 or 2 levels under that.
Hungry for apples?
Yeah.
So let's get
Also,
right.
there are many places on the internet besides this podcast, and you should come find us in all those places. If you think about places that exist on the internet, YouTube, Twitter, even Facebook, I guess, if you haven't deleted your account, we're in those places. Come find us there.
Seriously, just type the word GeekNights into Google, and a lot of different things appear.
Mhm.
We pretty much own
It's
the
all
word.
one word. There's no space in the middle.
Yep. I wonder what happens if I put a space in the middle.
Try it and see.
Same thing.
Okay.
Same list.
All right.
GeekNights podcast on TV tropes. Who made a TV tropes page?
That's
about-
been there for a long time.
Oh, I guess I never noticed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we're not going to talk about the specifics of Universal Fancon. It is just the most recent egregious convention failure. It is my opinion.
And not all of these things are conventions. There was the thing that was on
Fyre
the,
Festival.
Yeah, Fyre Festival and DashCon.
Yeah,
and
But I guess what we want to talk
at
about,
least DashCon happened.
it technically happened.
Yeah.
It didn't happen again.
No.
But
Oh, the
there's
Pokemon
been,
Go thing.
there has been a rash of multiple kinds of convention failures lately. We've done shows on failed
Or
conventions
major
before.
major events.
Yes.
Festival failures as well. Expos.
But they've broken down into sort of 3 categories. And one of those categories, I think, is something that we need to talk about. Because I think I feel like the problem we're about to describe is going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Well, I've seen it getting worse, so it's like I can see the snowball has already rolled halfway down the hill, and it ain't stopping.
Yep.
So you
So the
got
first-
anyone who doesn't see that snowball halfway down the hill better open their eyes.
So the first thing we're not going to talk about are conventions and events that happen but are just really shitty.
Like DashCon?
Like DashCon, or like, of course, DashCon edges into the second category heavily. There's a Venn diagram here, and at the center is a lot of sad kids who show up in a town.
Right, but for example, the first Ohio con we went to, right? It was a con. It happened, right? They ran it. There was just a lot of failures at the actual event,
Yep.
logistically and otherwise.
Like to the point that we would never go back.
You know, there's the Citicon we went to,
Yep.
right? Where it's just like, well, it actually happened, but the turnout was just like...
And it wasn't a
basically-
scam, it just sucked.
Right, it's like there's a lot of people, they run a convention, they make it happen, they put on the event.
Like Philly Wizard World happened a bunch of
Right.
times.
There's either, you know, maybe it happens and it's just a bad convention. Maybe it happens and no one shows up, or maybe that happens and there's logistical failures at the thing, but they happen, right?
I gotta interrupt. Someone pointed, when we're talking about the graphic design, someone just said in the chat, what if we dig, spelled capital D-I-G-G, your website's current look?
Mm-hmm.
That's the appropriate level of burn
Mm-hmm.
for our current website.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, we're not talking about conventions that just suck or fail in the traditional sense.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the thing that happens. There's another kind of convention that fails before it happens, or fails in a way that prevents the event from continuing, almost always either because it was oversold and the fire marshal shut it down,
Mm-hmm.
or the people who ran it were so incompetent that they failed to do things like put the requisite deposit down for the convention center.
Have insurance.
Yep. Have enough money to pay for the things you need to pay for during the event.
Right. So like the Fyre Festival, right? Is everyone showed up to this place, but like they didn't have water for people to drink. Or,
like there wasn't an event.
I don't remember the details, but I vaguely remember something like there weren't toilets to go in. It's
Of
just
course.
Like, so suddenly you've got a group of people in a place, and now it's unfunctionable, right? As opposed to say like OhioCon, where it's like, oh, the tournaments didn't happen or the video game systems weren't working.
This would be more like we show up in Baltimore and an anime convention that we pre-registered for and had a hotel for just isn't happening. Like we show up at the convention center and the doors are locked and that's it.
A whole bunch of people go to PAX, they're outside the doors, and they can't get in. The things aren't set up on the inside.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned Fyre Festival.
Someone shows up to their panel, there's just no equipment and no enforcer.
Pretty sure some charges were filed around Fyre Festival, because here's the third part, and this is where things get interesting. I also want to say very clearly right now, we are not lawyers. We are not making specific accusations against specific events who may have
we don't
lawyers.
know enough about any of them to do so.
But Fyre Festival and FanCon and conventions like it, there is a line between it failed because the people who ran it sucked, and it failed because it was designed to fail and was actually a scam.
Right. It's hard to tell the difference, and sometimes you'll never even know the difference, and it doesn't matter. It's the same thing either way.
Now, I suspect very strongly that there are actual events that have happened in the last several years that were scams from the beginning.
Yes.
And I feel like there are going to be a lot of these because of the more fundamental problem. One, as we learned from Black Beauty, ignorance and malice have the exact same effect on their victims.
Mm-hmm.
So it does not matter why a convention fails in this matter. It harms people who try to attend it the same way. But also, there's this extra weird problem that is specific to certain kinds of conventions and events where there are a lot of people, both on the privileged side who know things about these events and have worldly experience, and on the underprivileged side who literally don't have experience with these things, like people who've never been to a concert, never been to a convention. In both groups, there's a huge percentage of people who are willing to give other people large amounts of money to attend events that they assume will exist because there's a website that says that event exists.
Well, I mean, there's people willing to give people money just because a website has a thing on it for not just conventions, but anything.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I think a lot of this actually comes down to not necessarily conventions. Conventions like a special, most egregious case of a larger problem of simply pre-crowdfunding anything, right? Someone puts up a fake board game. Everyone pays money because they want the board game. The board game never ships.
Yep.
Right? It's the same thing. The difference is that when it's a convention or an event of large scale, right, or moderate scale, people not only, pay like, oh, I pay $40 for a board game that I never get. I'm out $40, which could be a big deal for.
But
someone
a convention, kids are out like a first night at the hotel.
Yeah, you're
flights.
Also well, you can cancel your hotel rooms up to 24 hours in advance.
Depends.
Flights, no, you're boned.
There is an increasing trend, actually.
You already put in your vacation days at work. Who knows?
Maybe you're vending at it and you shipped things.
Right.
To the convention?
Maybe, you started printing and manufacturing merchandise. You started, marketing.
But I do want to point out, Scott, there's been a trend increasingly with a lot of conventions where the hotel blocks have policies of a week or a month in advance to cancel.
I've never seen that before.
I have seen it many times in the last 3 or 4 years.
I've never seen a hotel reservation that was, the longest I've seen is 48 hours.
I have seen...
I don't deny it, but I'm just saying, I've personally never seen more than 48 hours.
I have personally seen 1 month for multiple events recently, and I have seen events that I did not go to where the policy was you cannot cancel a hotel if you book it through the convention's block. And this is happening because the idea of hotel blocks is becoming obsolete because literally any major event will sell out every hotel in every city anyway. So no one has an incentive, like no hotel has any reason to provide discounted rooms anymore.
No, not discounted, but the incentive is for the event to partner with the hotels to make sure that those rooms are set aside for its attendees and not for people doing anything else in town. Otherwise, the convention won't get enough people coming to it because they can't get rooms, and it'll hurt the convention itself. So the hotels can actually, if your event is selling out, you can charge the events say, hey, give us money to set these room aside for you.
But the hotels increasingly can back away from the traditional SLA of canceling hotels. But anyway, that's a sort of a side problem.
But yeah, the point is that when it's a convention that people are crowdfunding and paying for in advance, people are putting in a lot more investment, and they get way, way, way more boned when it fails. Maybe they've even you've gone to the place and then found that it failed. Now they really have been super boned, right? You actually flew to a place, stayed in a hotel, went to a town, and there's nothing there.
So that latter part is what extra terrifies me, because it's one thing if someone gets scanned by a website and buys a board game that doesn't exist. But if someone does enough research to know, say, like, the examples from PAX, where there are people who have never been to a PAX before, who know that a particular YouTube streamer is performing at this PAX in a particular room.
Not performing, appearing.
Yeah, appearing.
They're not musicians.
True.
At least usually they're not.
So this person knows that this event exists and that a person they want to see is going to be in a room at this convention, but do not know what day of the event that person is in the room, and make arrangements to travel to the event anyway, and then make a terrible mistake because the event was on Saturday instead of Friday. The number of people, and I have a lot of experience with
PAX
this.
specifically doesn't post the schedule until very close to the actual convention,
Yep.
and you have to buy your tickets way, way, way in advance. And if you're going there to see, your Markiplier, are you buying all 4 days?
But this is the thing. People who attend conventions, and having worked on a lot of conventions over the years, not just attended them, I can say that a huge percentage of the people who go to NerdCons literally do zero research about the event before they attend.
But somehow they get there.
Yeah, but they don't know that hotels charge sales tax and can't pay for their room.
So how
shit
can
like that
how can the
happens.
person that ignorant and clueless possibly be able to tell a real convention from a scam convention?
Yep. So I think what I want to talk about right now is how to tell the difference between a convention that's likely to occur versus a convention that is likely to not occur or fail in some disastrous way. Rule number 1, if it is a first-year convention, there's already a 20% chance of failure.
Right. So a first-year convention, even if it's trying to honestly happen, is so difficult, especially if the people doing it don't have a lot of experience doing it. There's so many ways it can fail in so many different categories that it's the odds of failure are very, very high, even if everything they're trying hard and they're honest. So if it's a first-year convention, now here's the thing: if I just say don't go to first-year conventions, that's bad because
Especially because we want to do a convention.
Well, no, but you're basically not just that, but you're basically saying, look, the conventions we have are the only ones we can ever have. We should never have competition. We should never have new ideas or anything. No, we need to have new conventions. The more, the merrier.
Yep.
Right? But how do we make sure that people aren't taking risks and going to first-year conventions that are too risky? And here's my advice. It's real simple.
All right, I'm curious what your advice is, because I have my own
Only
advice.
go to a first-year convention if it's A, near you, and that it's not a really big deal, and B, don't pre-register or pre-order. A first-year convention should not and will not sell out because it's brand new. Buy tickets at the door only.
Here's the problem. Most first-year conventions either do a Kickstarter or need a certain amount of pre-regis to even happen.
I would not kickstart a first-year convention
so more importantly,
that is not either so cheap or very close to me, so I don't have to risk the hotel. I would only be risking the price of the badge and such.
Yep. So I think a more nuanced approach is if a first-year convention targets an attendance of more than a few hundred people, avoid like the plague.
Yes.
Because it is, unless that first-year convention is being run by a corporation, like the new anime convention in New York City. It's run by a real company that has real employees who have experience running big conventions in the Jacob Javits Center.
Right. For example,
I'm confident that convention happened.
Like Disney, I think, is going to do some, they've always had the Star Wars con. There's
Yeah,
gonna
if
be
Disney does a
there's going to
con-
be Disney con, it's legit, right?
If Hasbro runs a My Little Pony con, I'm pretty sure it'll happen.
Right.
But if someone on Kickstarter is kickstarting their My Little Pony Steven Universe con, and they're going to have an artist alley, and they're going to have 10,000 people attend, that convention is almost guaranteed either going to fail or is actually a scam.
Mm-hmm. If you see like a small first-year convention, right? Usually, if you're trying to suss out how legit it is, right? Check that guest list, right? And try to meet those guests. One of them is going to be someone you want to see. Otherwise, why are you going?
Yep.
contact them.
So yeah, okay.
Because if there's a first-year con, the guest isn't going to be so big you can't contact them, right?
Well, if there's a first-year con and their guests are like Barack Obama and Carrot Top,
Something's up.
yeah.
Something's fishy. No.
I don't know why Carrot Top is
So
always
there's a
the person I
first-year
go to.
con, and the guests are Rim and Scott. Contact Rim and Scott to see, are they actually going to this thing? You know, can it be trusted?
Yup.
Right? Try to contact and communicate with other people who are going or or know the people running it. You know, you got to do some sort of, networking, whatever, to figure out how legit is this con. Maybe you'll call us and be like, hey, I see you guys are guests at this first-year con.
And we might be like, what?
Yeah, we might be like, what? I don't know what that is. Or
And you might laugh. That happens a lot. Do you know how many of these fake fucking conventions just say they have a guest attending, and that guest was never invited to the convention?
they don't even know what the hell it is.
Yep. Or they're like,
Or
they're
maybe-
selling autographs for someone who hasn't actually signed a contract to come yet.
Yeah, but maybe you contact us and we say, oh, yeah, that con's being run by our friend. You should definitely come. I know it's legit. It's real. You'll hear us talk about it in the meta moment.
Yep.
Then you know you can go. If you trust us, you got to trust somebody, right? The point is you got to find someone you can trust in this chain here. If you don't know the people running the con, right, then you got to find someone else who knows them that you can trust. If there's no one you trust, then you got to stay away. Wait for the second year.
If a first-year con is in a large convention center and not run by a big company, I'm pretty much 100% it's going to fail.
Nope, it's got to be in a small place, like a hotel ballroom at the biggest.
Yep. If a first-year con's website has a lot of like Squarespace looking graphic design and looks really slick, but there's no actual content, like there's no community stuff, there's nothing there below the surface, and there's a lot of promises about like an artist alley, but there's no form to sign up for an artist alley. Avoid it because it's probably just a scam at that point.
Right. If you try to talk to the other people who are thinking about going to this con, right, and see how communicative are the people running it with this, you form this community of attendees. How communicative are the people running the con with the attendee group, right? And what are they giving you specifics, or are they leading you on?
Yep.
If they can't say, oh, yes, it's on this date in this place, and here's our, like if they're not showing that they're doing all the things, like here's our policies on this, and here's our weapons thing, and here's, we're working on the schedule.
Yep.
Right? If you
Also,
if they're just sort of like, yeah, guys, sign up. Yeah, it's going to be great. It's like, uh-huh.
Oh, even more than that. This is like a specific one.
Or if they don't say anything.
If they have like, there's policies on their website, let's say, about stuff. Takes a few sets of text from their website, type and copy paste it into Google, and see if that appears in generic websites.
Also, look if you can get the names of the people running the con and
Well, if
Google
you can't
them.
get the names of the people running the con, probably a fail.
Right, but Google them and see what's up. One of the ones that recently failed, the person who ran it ran a previous. This is the second time they did this, and they got away with it both times.
Yep.
Right?
So this is the segue into
Only after the second fail did people point out, hey, that same person did both of these fails. Why would somebody who did a failing con, if they were going to try again, wouldn't they run the exact same, be like, okay, I failed. Honestly, I'm going to try to do the exact same con again. No, they tried to do a different con the second time.
Well, you know what this is? This is getting into the final point, like the thing I'm worried about that I think is going to happen a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of fan conventions over the next few years that are basically the producers.
Yes.
And I think the roadmap for this seems pretty clear.
If anyone doesn't know what that means, go to your video source.
Just
wherever
type
that
the
is.
word "the producers" into Google.
Right. Make sure you watch the Mel Brooks movie if you can't go to like a theater and see it performed. Or whatever.
I should watch that movie again. It's been a while.
Why not?
That movie is so
Why
good.
not watch it every day?
That movie is so great.
But yeah, make sure you watch the Mel Brooks, Gene Wilder producers.
Oh my God.
And not any other producers.
So here's the roadmap that I see. First, you and a small number of people are going to run the convention scam.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just scam people, like you kickstart a con and just don't do anything and steal all the money, you can get sued, get in trouble. You scam, fraud. You need to crowdfund the convention, put the token effort in to show that you did some minimum level of due diligence, but here's what you do. You target the convention at either underprivileged people, unworldly people, narrow fandoms that are underserved. Like, go straight line for like Ladybug, whatever, or Steven Universe, whatever. Like,
right.
you
Well,
go
I mean,
for,
there are some cons like that. I think there's like a Gargoyles con I've heard about, right?
Yep.
Or like a Gem and the Holograms con somewhere. It's
Yep.
like these super narrow cons that do happen are pretty good for the people who are in
Yeah.
those fandoms, and right. So it's like if I were to run, say, what's something really narrow?
Thundercats, ThunderCon.
Yeah, Thundercats.
Thundercats.
Well, that's a little bigger than those, but yeah, that's still pretty niche, right? The Thundercats con.
I would not go
I'd
to
be
the
like,
Thundercats con.
I'd be like, Lino's coming, everybody.
Yeah.
I
But
might actually want, if it was close, I would go to
oh yeah,
Thundercats
no,
con.
if it was in New York City, I would go to it.
I could have if Mum Ra sing
The
Shimmy,
ever
Shimmy, yeah.
living. But what you do then, and this is what I've seen happen, a lot of these cons that fail, they fail in a way, like they're designed to fail in a way that could in court plausibly be put off on the staff having made mistakes and fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Negligence as opposed to gross negligence. Negligence as opposed to actual fraud.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what they do is you find people who go to a lot of conventions or maybe were low-level staff at a bunch of conventions. Like someone who's like,
Well, for example, this person who I've heard, I'm not saying the person's name because I just saw this in some tweets.
I read about it too. I'm not
Was
saying
a-
the name because I don't want to get involved.
Right, but the person who tried to run this recent con and the other one that failed both, and it was the same person twice that I just talked about, was a person who had previously been a high-level staff person at Anime Expo, or at least is credited as such, and thus brings some believability, right? If you were
Yep.
like, oh, I used to be almost the con chair or almost the con chair at other successful convention, and now I'm doing this one on my own, you sort of want to trust that, right? But apparently here's a case where a person was in that kind of position or claims to have been, I think they were, and then did 2 scam cons as far as we can tell.
So here's the rub. Like here's the not the rub. Here's the magic part of this. You find those kinds of people who might be earnest. You need to have a staff who believe in the convention, and you guide them into making their own mistakes and being responsible and culpable for those mistakes. So you get people who have been low-level staff at a bunch of conventions and feel, you know the people we meet at conventions who feel like it's easy to run a convention because they don't know better. They've never done the finance of a convention. They've never done logistics of a convention.
Well-
They've been the person like checking badges at the door or scheduling panels.
Well, this is something that not just conventions, but I think the world as a whole, in all sorts of organizations, even just like your families and companies and every organization, right? Is there are certain things that people at the executive level do, right? If you're in a family, only your parents know about like how much money
Yeah.
they got in taxes, right? It's usually money-related things, but not always. In a company, right, when business deals happen between the executives in closed meetings, the employees don't know what the fuck goes on in there, right?
Yep.
At a convention, only the people on the board deal with things like insurance and who knows what, right?
Yep.
And thus, people who are not in that top tier of an organization on the executive level not only don't know about these things that go on, right? They don't know the details of them.
They don't know that they don't know.
They don't even know that they don't know. Like, you don't even know that a convention has to buy insurance.
So you name
Also-
someone like the director of operations for a convention,
Right.
and you set them up to not get insurance because they're not gonna.
But there's also no way for them to learn unless somebody specifically brings them in. And this is why we sort of have like these, like this big gap in our whole society of like people who know the things and how to make them do, right?
Yeah.
And people who don't because they haven't had someone who knows how the world works teach them and bring them up and show them all these things that have been hidden from them their whole lives.
But I think these scam conventions are getting a very earnest staff who are given all the rope they need to hang themselves, and they will make promises based on assumptions that are false and really try to make the event happen, and that provides the cover for the event actually just failing.
Right, but I think we need, as a whole, right, in general, we need to somehow open up the whole world, right, to not necessarily the specific details of any one organization, right, because
Yep.
that's the stuff you want to keep secret,
Yeah.
but the generalities of, like, this is how things work on, executive levels of things, people who aren't, through the wall,
Of
you
course.
can at least learn how these things go.
Of course, counterpoint, that's what people who run big companies and events go to college for and learn. Like, I learned some of those things.
Some of them, but you don't really learn.
Well, I learned the thing because I do that kind of work in certain areas. I've done a lot of executive work, and you know what? I learned about it and know about it because it's my profession. It's one thing to expect a professional to learn those things. It is another thing to expect like some rando to learn these things.
A lot of times you can't learn those until it's got to become. It's like you can't get the job to do it until you've learned it already. What's that beeping noise?
That's the Marantz running out of battery.
Good job.
We're almost done with the show.
We better turn the show off because our backup is gone.
I think we should turn the show off because I'm actually really hungry.
I'm also really hungry.
That was a good show.
Do you know, so, not just now, I took a different route.
Yeah.